So around 10 or 12 years ago, we had a background in ceramic processing, we had a background in high temperature furnace technologies and controlled atmosphere firing. And on that basis, I was actually approached by a rather engaging chap by the name of Neil Maxwell from New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, who sort of said, we through NZTE are trying to set up the basis of a titanium industry in New Zealand. We think there's a real future for this. I've been around the country looking at what capabilities we have, and there's some big black holes, and I reckon you could backfill some of these holes. So I thought, yeah, we can do this. I've worked in glass technology, I've worked in ceramics technology, I've worked a lot of materials processing. Let's look at titanium technologies. And so from that day on, we began to look at what options for titanium technologies there were. Now, NZTE has decided there was an industry opportunity. It decided also that not just capability was needed, but that a research association was needed. So NZTE put up the money to start the Titanium Industry Development Association, or TiTeNZ. But in parallel with that, there needed to be a government research program that sustained a research capability to support not just TiTeNZ, but the industry itself. And so basically I took it upon myself in conjunction with others to try and set up what was going to be a research program that would support not just TiTeNZ, but this sort of fledgling titanium industry. Okay, so my colleague at NZT, Neil Maxwell, and I had just sort of set up what would look like a profile of a research program in New Zealand. And he'd been around the country talking to people at Waikato, talking to people at Auckland, and to ourselves. And we between us, we realised there was something like about 6 quite different types of technology platform that needed to be developed to support not just TiTeNZ, but this fledgling titanium industry. We weren't sure how it was going to grow or where it was going to grow to, but we knew full well that there were a number of types of capability that were essential in order to support an industry sector going forward. First of these was hot working, shaping and forming of the metal. Second of these was to build on a small capability that was already present in a little company called TiTeNZ. That is a way to make high purity titanium alloy powders from relatively inexpensive raw materials. Third thing was cellular materials, or porous or open structure materials, a real opportunity for those in terms of foamed titanium structures. Fourth thing was additive manufacturing. It was a new kid on the block, but the very beginnings of additive manufacturing were taking place at that stage. TiTeNZ had just begun to make the first investments in the additive technologies, especially for titanium manufacturing. And then one of the other things that was of some interest was coatings technologies. What could we do to use titanium as a coated material or as part of a coating? So all of these new capabilities became part of what was then going to be a research platform for us going ahead in New Zealand. So we'd been doing some preliminary work for a year or two, around 2009, 2010, just sort of poking and learning and trying to understand how these materials worked and responded. And then the government put out a call for research proposals in what were obviously to be platform technologies that would support particular industry sectors. And this was timed around about 2011, I suppose, this call for proposals came out, and the timing could not have been better. So we collectively, with Waikato University and GNS Science and the TiTeNZ people and Auckland University, worked out a package of work that would address the main goals of this new funding program, this new platform technology. And some of the goals here really needed to be pushing multiple buttons. That is, the program of work we needed to come up with needed to address multiple projects in multiple sectors across New Zealand industry. It wasn't good enough to do one thing in one small corner of the world. It needed to be a much more widespread capability and technology program than that. And so the 6 kind of research capabilities that we had been talking about with Neil Maxwell and I then got transformed into a research program that had 6 primary research aims, or projects if you like, which then took up the flavour of hot working, of cellular materials, of coatings and so forth. And we got that bid funded in 2012 for 2 years. So we had 2 years of funding at a particularly strong and high level for 2 years of the program. And then we were able to get that program repackaged and refunded for a further 6 years from 2014 taking us right through to now on the edge and well into 2020. So at the time we were putting together this first funding bid for the ministry, it became clear to me that we needed a lot of industry input to make this fly. After all, we were targeting industry players. We needed industry advice and input. And one thing that we thought we would do that was quite different and had not been done up to that stage was to actually formally secure the input of a number of senior industry professionals as part of the program. So I actually spoke to a few people about this, and we came up with the idea of an industry advisory panel who would have a formal role in the operation of the program. While they would have no legal responsibility, they would certainly have an informal responsibility to provide industry guidance and industry feedback. And at the time we were doing this, we were scratching around thinking, who are the right people to be on this? And there are some obvious industry candidates that were right off the block and glaring, but we needed a really serious and substantive chair to take this over. And fortunately, at that stage, there was a gentleman by the name of John Mason around, and John had a lot of expertise in not just his current job in the ports of Tauranga, but he had actually been the chair of the NZTE board at exactly the point where all this titanium discussion was kicking off. So he had a really vested interest in getting titanium industries up and running, and so it was a real easy sell to ask this excellent man to take the key role of chair of the industry advisory panel. And with his guidance, we captured half a dozen more fairly willing but certainly well-connected individuals, primarily from around the Tauranga area where the industry was based, to act as our industry advisory panel, and that panel continues to this day. Right, you've heard a high-level story about the Titanium Technologies program, TiTeNZ. What I'd invite you to do now is look in detail, not just at the program as a whole, but some of the individual projects that make up this program. So why don't you turn to the web page that looks at the projects themselves, pick one of interest, and find out more detail about that. You'll enjoy it.